Hello, this is John, and let us seek the truth daily together as we connect the dots as to why the mainstream media outlets and even Fox News nowadays seems to be going against President Donald J. Trump. Now, whether you're liberal or conservative, Democrat, Republican, it does not matter. You can see the bias out there. And we're going to take a look as we look at today's day and age, why all the censorship on social media and why all the mainstream media is and has been putting forth the hate Trump narrative, while at the same time saying America first is not a good thing. Now, many of you have probably heard of the Round Table. These groups that you're looking at here are all part of a globalistic agenda to bring us into a one world government. We're going to focus on the Council on Foreign Relations, and you will be amazed at how many people are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. So I'm over here at CFR's own page, and they're showing you their corporate members. And you can find this just by searching CFR corporate members, and you can look at everybody that's involved for yourself. You got Google, Facebook, and you'd be amazed at how many people are actually associated and members and partners with the Council on Foreign Relations. And Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox News, is a member of the CFR. Now, back in the early 1960s, Professor Carroll Quigley wrote a history book called Tragedy and Hope. It was basically written for the insiders themselves. He, being an insider, had access to the files of the CFR for 2 years. And he put together this history book for the CFR members to read, but it got out into public hands and sold 8,000 copies, and then the publisher quit publishing it. And then what happened is it got pirated, and Carroll Quigley was very upset that somebody else was making money off of his book. So then the publisher started to republish Carroll Quigley's book called Tragedy and Hope, and you can buy it now today, but it's very dry and slow reading. But there's a audio book out there that I'd like to point you to that explains what Tragedy and Hope is all about, and you can actually listen to it free on YouTube. And you can also buy this book online at Amazon. I'm going to get my daughter and my son one. It's called Tragedy and Hope 101, and here's the online audio book you can listen to on YouTube. It's 5 hours and 31 minutes long. Now, I'd like for you to listen to G. Edward Griffin as he has given a lecture in regards to tragedy and hope taken from Quigley's writings. And in here, he will be mentioning names who are members of the CFR, and this lecture was given back in 2006.
Because some people still find it hard to believe that their politicians or anybody in prominence would not tell the truth. Now, world government doesn't just happen by writing articles or books. It happens only when people come into control of the power centers of society and drive society into world government. And Quigley explains how this came about. He said, and I quote, "Through Lord Milner's influence, these men were able to win influential posts in government, in international finance, and become the dominant influence in British imperial affairs and foreign affairs up to 1939. In 1909 through 1913, they organized semi-secret groups known as Round Table groups in the chief British dependencies and in the United States. These still function in 8 countries. The task was given to Lionel Curtis, who established in England and each dominion a front organization to the existing local Round Table group. This front organization, called the Royal Institute of International Affairs, had as its nucleus in each area the existing submerged Round Table group. In New York, it was known as the Council on Foreign Relations and was a front for J.P. Morgan and Company." I hope you were awake and heard all of that. Because what we just learned from Quigley himself, we come to the ubiquitous Council on Foreign Relations, which was mentioned by several of your speakers earlier today, and who those people are and what influence they have. Where did this organization come from? Now we know. We're informed it was spawned by a secret society which still exists today, that it is a front for a roundtable group originally embodied in J.P. Morgan and Company, but now the Rockefeller Consortium, and that its primary goal is no longer the expansion of the British Empire, but global collectivism with control in private hands, administered in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are their words, not mine. Now, why is this important? It's important because the members of the Council on Foreign Relations are the rulers of America. Who are they? Well, once in a while their name pops into the news, but very seldom you get them all together. I'm going to take a few moments. This might be boring, but I think for the record, everyone needs to be familiar with the names, some of the prominent names, who are members of this outer ring of a secret society. Let's start with the presidents of the United States. Herbert Hoover, Dwight Eisenhower, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, James Carter, George Bush Sr., and William Clinton. JFK once said that he was a member of the CFR, but nowhere can you find him on the membership rolls. So I guess he was a wannabe, but didn't quite make it in. But he actually said that he thought he was a member. And of course, the presidential candidates, John Kerry and Vice President Richard Cheney, are members of the CFR. Secretaries of State. This is a very important position for this group because it's even more important than the President. The President can be controlled by the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and all of his cabinet members who are pretty much appointed for him. You know, he doesn't appoint, presidents don't appoint their cabinet members from their own private telephone directory, you know. They're not even in their book. They're told who to appoint. Anyway, here are the Secretaries of State, perhaps the most important position in the United States government as far as the CFR is concerned. Dean Rusk, Robert Lansing, Frank Kellogg, Henry Stimson, Cordell Hull, E.R. Stettinius, George Marshall, Dean Acheson, John Foster Dulles, Christian Herter, Dean Rusk, William Rogers, Henry Kissinger, Cyrus Vance, Edmund Muskie, Alexander Haig, George Shultz, James Baker, Lawrence Eagleburger, Warren Christopher, William Richardson, Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell, and of course, Condoleezza Rice. Did we leave anybody out? I don't think so. Now, Secretaries of Defense, also very important. James Forrestal, George Marshall, Charles Wilson, Neil McElroy, Robert McNamara, Melvin Laird, Elliot Richardson, James Schlesinger, Harold Brown, Caspar Weinberger, Frank Colucci, Richard Cheney, Les Aspin, William Perry, William Cohen, and Donald Rumsfeld. Directors of the CIA, pretty important. Walter Smith, William Colby, Richard Helms, Allen Dulles, John McCone, James Schlesinger, George Bush Sr., Stansfield Turner, William Casey, William Webster, Robert Gates, James Woolsey, John Deutsch, William Studeman, George Tenet, Porter Goss, and Michael Hayden. Now, some better-known corporations with CFR members at the board of directors or chief executive levels, where they dominate these huge corporations. It's quite a list. I had to trim this down, believe it or not. Here are just a few. Atlantic Richfield Oil Company, AT&T, Avon Products, Bechtel Construction Group, Boeing Company, Bristol Myers Squibb, Chevron, Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, Consolidated Edison of New York, Exxon, Dow Chemical, DuPont Chemical, Eastman Kodak, Enron, Estee Lauder, Ford Motor, General Electric, General Foods, Hewlett-Packard, Hughes Aircraft, IBM, International Paper, Johnson & Johnson, Levi Strauss & Company, Lockheed Aerospace, Lucent Technologies, Mobil Oil, Monsanto, Northrop, Pacific Gas and Electric, Phillips Petroleum, Procter & Gamble, Quaker Oats, SBC Yahoo, Shell Oil, SmithKline Beecham Pharmaceuticals, Sprint Corporation, Texaco, Santa Fe Southern Pacific Railroad, Teledyne, TRW, Southern California Edison, Unicol, United Technologies, Verizon Communications, Warner Lambert, Weyerhaeuser, and Xerox, to mention just a few. Now, in the media, also very important in controlling the thinking processes of the American people. We find CFR members in the management and operational positions at the Army Times, Associated Press, Association of American Publishers, Barron's, Boston Globe, Business Week, Christian Science Monitor, Dallas Morning News, Detroit Free Press, Detroit News, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, New York Post, San Diego Union Tribune, Times Mirror, Random House, W.W. Norton and Company, Warner Books, American Spectator, Atlantic, Harper's Farm Journal, Financial World, Insight, Washington Times, Medical Tribune, National Geographic, National Review, New Republic, New Yorker, Newsday, Newsmax, Newsweek, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Reader's Digest, Rolling Stone, Scientific American, Times Warner, Time, U.S. News and World Report, Washington Post, ABC, CBS, CNN, NBC, PBS, RCA, the Walt Disney Company, and of course, Rupert Murdoch. Media personalities, the talking heads, include David Brinkley, Tom Brokaw, William Buckley, Peter Jennings, Bill Moyers, Dan Rather, Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, Katie Couric, and Andrea Mitchell, was the wife of Alan Greenspan, former chairman of the Federal Reserve System. Of course, Alan is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Labor unions and with CFR members in key positions include AFL-CIO, United Steelworkers of America, United Auto Workers, American Federation of Teachers, Bricklayers and Allied Craft, Communication Workers of America, Union of Needle Trades, and Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers. All the big ones. In the tax-exempt foundations and think tanks, the number of CFR members in controlling positions is 443. Some of the better-known names are the Sloan and Kettering Foundation, Aspen Institute, Atlantic Council, Bilderberg Group, Brookings Institute, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Carnegie Foundation, Ford Foundation, Guggenheim Foundation, Hudson Institute, John and Catherine MacArthur Foundation, Mellon Foundation, Rand Corporation, Rhodes Scholarship Selection Commission, Rockefeller Foundation, and Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Trilateral Commission, and the UN Association. In the universities, the number of CFR members who are or have been professors, department chairmen, presidents, or board members is 563. My last count. Could be different today, probably more. In the financial institutions such as banks, the Federal Reserve, stock exchanges, and brokerage houses, the number of CFR members with controlling positions is 284. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that gives you an idea. We could go into other areas, but bear in mind that the total membership of this group is about 4,000 people.
Now, this full lecture is an hour and 13 minutes long. I just wanted to play a list, as he read off there, of the people that are members of the CFR, and that was from 2006. Many more have gone in. The good thing is Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State today, is not a member of the CFR. And very shortly we're going to get to how the CFR gained complete and total media control, and it's plain as day. As back in 2017, before they were founded, J.P. Morgan and Associates got their lawyers together to find out what it would take to control the entire media policy of the United States of America. And they found all they needed to do was buy the top 25 most influential newspapers, because all the other newspapers got their information from the top big newspaper organizations. And so that was back in 1917, 1921. That's when they bought them. And then what transpired from there is radio came along. CFR jumped on that as far as censorship and policy. And then television, same there. And here we are today with social media. As you saw, Google and Facebook are members of the CFR. So let's listen to a few people as they are talking at the CFR, and you'll see just how influential the CFR is. This is Vice President Dick Cheney.
It's good to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. As Pete mentioned, I've been a member for a long time and was actually a director for some period of time. I never mentioned that when I was campaigning for re-election back home in Wyoming.
Oh, thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, I guess, the mothership in New York City. But it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
And then last but not least, I could go on and on and on with these highly influential individuals, as you just heard from Hillary Clinton while she was Secretary of State of the United States of America. And here is CIA Director John Brennan while he was still the CIA Director. And tell me what you think he's talking about here.
The array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do.
Well, isn't that interesting? Upper atmospheric aerosol injections. Let's see, has anybody heard of a thing called chemtrails? What he fails to tell you is these are nanoparticles of aluminum and barium. And they fall to the ground and we breathe them in, but they get in the soil and the water. And what happens when these metallic substances and nanoparticles are on the topsoil and in the water? It causes global warming. It's common sense. But there's a reason for this. You see, the global warming climate change aspect is going to be the white horse that the Antichrist rides in on. Pay attention to after all this electoral stuff is over and either Trump or Biden is sitting in the presidential seat, you're going to hear the climate change alarmists come out in global fashion that we have to come together as a one world organization and government and fight climate change. And basically what this will be doing is setting up the stage for the Antichrist in a way to preserve nature. And nature will be the new God.
I'm a big fan of Google, so I thought, well, let's see what the general pulse on nature is. And it doesn't surprise me that when you tap in what is nature, the first thing that comes up is nature is Satan's church. It's kind of like, what? You know, and I didn't even like Photoshop that or anything. I couldn't even make that up. I like the fact that it's like nature is Island Tropical Gourmet makes it into there as well. But it's like nature is Satan's church. So I want to use this opportunity to say, if this is Satan's church, I am a devil worshiper. I will do it now. I love Satan. Look at this. I mean, you know, it's like, come on, let's get real about this. We don't hate nature, but we're waging a war against it. We look at it as a sort of externalized commodity that's out there. But on a serious...
And if you don't know who you just heard, that was David D. Rothschild, one of the richest men in the world. Now we're looking over here. I was taking a break and I came back on and I watched Luke's video here. Holy cow, China brags about controlling U.S. establishment and Biden. So where does this fit in here? And I'm going to put a link to this because you got to hear what these Chinese people are saying about how they are in control of the U.S. establishment. So many of you might say, well, what does that have to do with the CFR? Well, CFR.org, Project on China as a Global Leader, Council on Foreign Relations. Let's take a look at that article because I had this up. I was going to put this in my video when I came back from break to point this out to you in regards to the globalization. So it's best you read this article for yourself, and I will put a link in the description. It's from the Council on Foreign Relations, Project on China as a Global Leader. And in this, you'll see that they want China to set the norms for a globalized one world government. And it's very scary when you read this article. And if you want to read it for yourself, I'm going to scroll down slowly. You can pause and read this. So just pause it and you can read it as we go down here, because I want to get to the bottom of it. So if you're paused, you can read all that. Okay, but right here, this project is made possible with the generous support of the Henry Luth Foundation and the Ford Foundation. Henry Luth was a member of Skull and Bones. He was also a CFR member, and he was also founder of Time Magazine, and he was the chief editor of Time Magazine in 1938 when they put Adolf Hitler's picture on the cover as Man of the Year. You can't make these things up.
The year is 1917, and Representative Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the U.S. Congressional Record. The statement reveals why J.P. Morgan interests hired 12 high-ranking news managers. The 12 were asked to determine the most influential newspapers in America. They were to figure out how many news organizations it would take to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. The 12 found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. Soon, that policy would be defined by a front group formed by J.P. Morgan and his colleagues. In fact, Morgan's personal attorney was founding president of the organization, the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the CFR maintains that its goal is to increase America's understanding of the world. However, the actual objective of this highly exclusive club is revealed by the rare admissions of the insiders themselves. In the early 60s, a Georgetown University professor collects information for a book favorable to the network of powerful men who founded the CFR. For 2 years, Professor Carroll Quigley is allowed to examine the confidential papers and secret records of this network. Quigley reveals that these men aim to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. In short, they seek total and quiet control of the entire world. And the CFR is their most visible conduit for carrying out that agenda. CFR members include America's wealthiest tycoons, as well as the highly placed elite in government, academic institutions, tax-exempt foundations, and the establishment media. Ruling Class Journalists, written by Richard Harwood, describes the CFR membership as the ruling establishment in the United States. The Washington Post article boasted that news reporters who are CFR members do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States, they help make it. Who are these policymakers? Many of their faces are familiar. NBC's Tom Brokaw, CBS's Dan Rather, ABC's Barbara Walters, Jim Lehrer of PBS, William F. Buckley of National Review, media mogul Rupert Murdoch, owner of the giant multifaceted News Corporation. These media heavyweights, and many others like them, are members of the CFR. Powerful corporations are also invited to become members. At the close of the 20th century, CFR influence presided over far-reaching consolidations of media control. In 1995, CFR members Michael Eisner of Disney and ABC's Thomas Murphy merged their media empires. Soon after the merger, the Disney-ABC empire becomes a CFR corporate member. In the year 2000, the world's largest internet service provider, America Online, joins forces with Time Warner, one of the world's largest news organizations. The CEOs favoring the move are CNN's Thomas Johnson and Time Warner's Gerald Levin, both CFR members. Once again, another media giant is created under the shadow of CFR influence. Today, an elite handful of individuals define the agendas that are supported by the empire of establishment news.